Welcome back to You Know What You Know. It's been a while. It's been over a month, I think, since my last full episode. Yeah, man, I was putting out some short content, but I really was just trying to figure out what I'm trying to do with this exactly. Just cause, like, the full episodes are really just, I don't know, me talking for 40 something minutes. I'm trying to, split it up, talk about subjects independently, and not just, two things over 40 minutes. You know what I mean? So yeah, I've just been doing some testing, figuring some stuff out the last few weeks. I've been recording, I just haven't been putting nothing out because, like I said, I'm just messing around with it. But I'm back today with my full NFL playoff predictions. I actually tried to do this video like 2 weeks ago for some stupid reason. For some reason, I thought that the standings would stay the same over the last 2 weeks, and then I realized I was like, wait, no, I can't. The standings are going to change. People are fighting for the division, week 18, like all this and that. I don't know what I was thinking. I was just really eager to do this video. But all right, but we're here though, and I'm here to do my predictions. They're interesting, man. I'm looking at them right now. They're interesting. The playoffs are just so weird this year because I feel like there's not too many like top dogs to where like there's no Mahomes in the playoffs. There's no Burrow. There's no Lamar. There's no what I'm saying. Like there's a bunch of people who missed the playoffs this year, and usually those are your favorites to go to the conference championship game, Super Bowl, whatever it is. Because I mean, playoffs. I typically lean coaching and quarterback. I feel like those are two things that really will win you playoff games consistently. And a lot of the usuals are not there this year. So it's been a little different. A lot of the 12, 13, 14 win teams are not what they were the last few years. So looking at these teams sometimes is like, for example, like the Jaguars, who won a bunch of games this year. It's like, do we trust them? Like they won X amount of games, but what I'm saying, like we still don't know. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard. It's hard to tell. But I think my picks are gonna surprise people for sure. But let's get right into it, man. Let's just get into it. First matchup, I'm gonna start with the AFC. Denver has the bye, number one seed, of course. First matchup I got here is Steelers versus Texans. And this one I don't really have too much to say about. I think it's pretty simple. I got the Texans winning. They've currently won 9 in a row. They're on fire. That defense is just amazing. I mean, you talk about like a balance between like each level is just pass rush, linebackers, secondary, all good. So yeah, man, I really like Houston, and I think like a major factor to me is just like, for example, like Houston's pass rush is insane, and Rogers' low mobility. It's just not. I just don't think it's going to be pretty. Rogers of course does get the ball out quick. He looked really good last week against the Ravens. They won that game. They got a little lucky to win that game though, and I feel like this might be the end of their little run. I think Pittsburgh had a cool little story this year. Aaron Rodgers possibly on his last year. Mike Tomlin, legendary head coach. They've made the playoffs X amount of years in a row. You know what I'm saying? So I just think it comes to an end here. I'm gonna take Houston to win that game. And the next game I got is Jacksonville versus Buffalo. Now this is interesting because this is one of those games where you have one of those quarterbacks I was just talking about in Josh Allen. Who I made a case for MVP with about 3 weeks left in the season. That didn't work out so well. So but yeah, man, I just this is a tough one to pick because Buffalo has the number one rushing offense and Jacksonville has the number one rushing defense. So this is gonna be interesting. It's definitely it's definitely gonna be interesting. And Trevor's been really good over the last 6 weeks. I believe he has 19 touchdowns to one turnover. So he's definitely been balling. I just don't know. With someone like him, we've seen him go on stretches where he's amazing. Year after year, I feel like he always has a stretch where it's like, oh, this is the number one pick we've been waiting for. This is what we saw coming out of college. And then it kind of goes back to, other things that we see with the bad completion percentage and the turnovers and, just taking some bad risks and making some bad decisions. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I'm gonna take Jacksonville here. I'm gonna take Jacksonville. Main reason is because Buffalo's number one rushing offense and Jacksonville's number one rushing defense. I'm gonna stick with the defense because I feel like if Buffalo can't run the ball, and that's including Josh Allen too. I'm assuming Jacksonville got some good linebackers over there. They got Devin Lloyd, and they got a lot of good players in the edge. Walker, Hines Allen, like they got people who can get to Josh Allen. You know what I mean? So I think if they can neutralize Josh, that's really all it's going to take. I think James Cook is not going to be He might still be a factor in the game, but I don't think he'll be able to get his game off as like he was all season. And yeah, man, I've talked about this before, man. That Buffalo receiving core is just not just doesn't do it for me. I think if they can't run the ball, and those receivers might struggle to get open, and it might leave Josh in a similar situation that he was in against Philly, to where he's scrambling, running around, getting chased around, and sometimes people look at it like, oh, what is Josh doing? Well, nobody's open. You know what I'm saying? Nobody's open. So, and then you watch the replay and the highlights and the film, and it's just like you'll see like nobody's open. You know what I mean? Like if it ain't Kincaid, Knox, Cook on the in the flat, whatever it is on the screen, they're not getting open, especially downfield. I mean they had like Brandon Cooks make like a big play last week, and it was like the craziest thing ever because none of the receivers are making plays. Like, and that was one of the first plays he's made since he got there. So, yeah, man, I don't know. I just don't. I think if Jacksonville's defense can neutralize that rushing attack from Buffalo, I think Jacksonville can win that game. Like I said, I think Trevor is just on a streak right now, and mind you, also Jacksonville's won 8 in a row. They've won 8 in a row, so they're coming in hot. They're rolling. They beat some good teams. They beat Denver. You know what I mean? So I really like Jacksonville right now, and I just think Buffalo's just they're not trending in the right direction right now. I really don't think so. I think they're on their way down more than up. And a couple weeks ago I was saying something different, and I was wrong. So mainly my argument there was mainly based on Josh Allen, and he's been okay, he's been fine, but the team around him, just you can tell he's struggling. He's doing a lot, and sometimes he can't do it all. So I'm gonna take Jacksonville to win this game. And next matchup I got here is this is one I've changed my answer for like 10 times already. I don't know. I'm not even going to lie to you. This is my most unsure pick. But Patriots versus Chargers, I'm going to take the Patriots. I had the Chargers down like 3 times, and I just kept switching it and switching it and switching it. And then I looked at some stats and some games and some stuff, and Herbert's been sacked 54 times this year. And, no Joe Alt, no Rashawn Slater. I'm not, I usually would go with LA in a situation like this because of quarterback and coaching, right? And I think, if you were going off the past, that's where you'd be with it. LA Chargers, they got Herbert, they got Harbaugh, you know what I mean? But I think New England, May and, why am I blanking? Mike Vrabel, freaking, they might be that one of those new combinations, you know what I mean? I mean, they are. Drake May's probably going to win MVP, or he has a good chance to. It's a close one. But, in Vrabel's first year in New England, that team is not, the team's good. I talked about this before also. The team's good. It's not great. You know what I'm saying? They don't have no all-pros on offense outside of Drake May. All-pros haven't been announced yet, but I'm assuming he'll be all-pro. But, yeah, they don't have – I believe they had no Pro Bowlers on offense outside of Drake May this year. Diggs, good receiver, still good, hit 1,000 yards, you know what I mean? But – nothing too crazy. Henderson was good. I've already gone over this. A lot of good players, And, May, he leads the league in completion percentage, passer rating, QBR, and average yards per attempt. So, Drake May is really just, he's locked in right now, man. He looked great against the Ravens. He's looked great. He had, a few, 2 to 3 week span where I thought he was, kind of slipping from the MVP race. And he brought himself right back into it. So, yeah, man, I like the way May's rolling. I think New England just has a confidence about them right now, too. I think Chargers would be one of the tougher teams they've played this year, outside of Buffalo. And, they played their schedule it was okay. That's the only thing going into this game is New England's schedule. Everybody's talking about their strength of schedule. I'm not too big on strength of schedule. Sometimes I am, but I'm not always too big on it because, for one, in the NFL – bad teams beat good teams all the time. And, it really is just like Carolina. You see, Carolina was a mediocre team this year. They beat a bunch of good teams. They beat the Rams. They beat the Packers. You know what I mean? They pulled out some big wins. And just my point is just strength of schedule is kind of a weird thing because if you play in a bad division, your strength of schedule is going to be bad. If you have the Dolphins twice and the Jets twice a year, your strength of schedule is going to be bad. You know what I mean? You play in the NFC West, your strength of schedule is going to be good. You got fucking 4 winners in that division. So, you know what I'm saying? 3, but you know what I mean? The Cardinals, obviously not that great. But you got Niners, Seahawks, Rams. It's a good division. And when you play in a division like the Patriots, your strength of schedule is going to be low. So, They played enough good teams for me personally. They played the Ravens, the Steelers, the Panthers, Bills twice, Bucks. You know what I mean? They played enough good teams. They didn't play, some of the top dogs like Denver, or Jacksonville. You know what I mean? But they played some good teams. They played some good teams. But yeah, I think I'm gonna go in New England just because I think they're rolling. I like the youth. I think I like the Chargers. The Chargers are cool. I think their wide receiver core is slightly overrated. I mean slightly. Like I do like the receivers. Keenan Allen's obviously getting a little old. I think McConkey, strived off getting a lot of looks last year. He's still a really good receiver. Don't get me wrong. I just don't know if they have a number one. You know what I mean? I think they might have. Obviously Keenan Allen was a one at one point. Quentin Johnson is not a one. He's a good receiver. He's not a one. And McConkey looked like he could have been a one. I don't know if he's a one. If he is, he's not, a great one, but he's a really good receiver. But yeah, I mean, I'm not the biggest fan. They have a great defense. Let me just get that. Let me just say that Chargers have a good defense, good pass rush. Derwin James, of course, makes a lot of plays for them. They have a good defense for sure. I just don't think a good defense does it against New England. New England didn't really have a problem against top 10 defenses this year. I believe they played 5 top 10 defenses this year and averaged about 26 points a game. So yeah, I don't think the defense is going to get it done, and I just think New England doesn't have the craziest pass rush, but the Chargers O line situation with Justin Herbert being hurt. I mean, he was hurt. I don't know what his hand situation is now, but yeah, I just think I got New England. They're rolling right now, and I think they're going to continue to roll. So yeah, I'm just going to take New England. All right, so in going into the divisional round, I got in the AFC still Houston versus Denver. Now this is a crazy matchup because this is pretty much the two top defenses in the league. Both offenses really middle of the pack. Not the best, but Denver actually has a lot better offense than I thought they would coming into the season. They got a lot of players to utilize over there. Cortland Sutton, R.J. Harvey. Of course Troy Franklin, Marvin Mims. They just have a bunch of players they could utilize, and losing Dobbins definitely hurt them. But and I think their run game might struggle. But it just really like after that, you just leaves you one factor, and that's just each team's passing game, right? Because Houston doesn't have a great running game. I think Denver's running game would struggle against Houston. And then, now it just comes down to both teams passing. And because we know both teams are going to play defense, right? So I think I trust Bo Nix in that offense more than I trust CJ Stroud. And, I really like Houston. At first, I did have them go into the AFC Championship game. But because of how the seeding worked out, I don't see them beating Denver. Like I said, I think I trust Denver's offense a little more. Just a little. Not too much, but a little more. And yeah, I just think both teams are going to play great defense, and I just trust Denver's defense a little more, and Denver's coaching. Houston has a good coach, D'Amico Ryans. He's a good coach, but Sean Payton is a different animal, man. I mean, look, he's already got the Broncos to 14 wins. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, man, I think I'm just going to take Denver on that game, and yeah, so first team in the AFC Championship game is Denver. Next matchup, just another hard one for me to pick. It's just people are gonna think I'm crazy. People are gonna think I'm crazy for sure. But my next matchup is Jacksonville versus New England, and I think I'm gonna take Jacksonville. And the main reason why is because I think for some reason, as crazy as this sounds, I feel like this is Trevor's year. I didn't say this before when I was talking about the last matchup, but I just feel like this is Trevor's year. And he didn't even play like absolutely amazing this year. Like he still only completed like 62% of his passes or something like that. Threw for 4,000 yards, I think 29 touchdowns, 12 picks, 26 to 12. He also had 9 rushing too though. But he had a good year. Not a great year. He had a good year. I still think his year in 22 was probably a little better, but probably second best year of his career. But yeah, I don't know. I think this is Trevor's year, man. Something about it. I just feel like we're going to get a run from somebody we don't expect this year. And I think it's going to be Jacksonville. So I think I'm going to take Jacksonville in this game. I really like New England. I think this is going to be one of the better defenses they faced. I mean, of course, I had them going against LA in the first round. I don't, like I said, I think LA will play good defense. I think New England's offense is just rolling right now. They're really young and exciting. I think LA's offense is a little stale sometimes. could just be me, but anyway, New England, Jacksonville. New England, I just think that, something about the first year a team really breaks out. I feel like not a lot of teams break out that first year and make that run that we all expect them to. They won their 14 games. They had a great season. I think they'll win a playoff game. I think the run's going to come to an end kind of early. And I think, Jacksonville just, I like their defense, man. They're savvy. They cause turnovers. They got decent pass rush, good run stop, good linebackers, decent secondary, like just kind of good all around. Nothing too crazy. They are missing some player. I know they're missing Jordan Lewis, who came from the Cowboys. He was really good for them this year before he got hurt. But yeah, man, I think New England is a little too neutral. I don't think, like I said, I've said this before in the past. I don't think they strive enough in one spot. To where in the playoffs, I think you have to have a strong suit. The balanced game is nice. You can run it a little, throw it a little. I just think that I think that Jacksonville's gonna win that game, and they've just been finding a way to win this year. And I think a big part of that to me is them beating Denver earlier. And hanging 34 on them earlier in the year. I kept going back to that game and looking at it, and I'm like, this is impressive. Because Denver has a great defense, and Denver was rolling. Denver won 11 out of the last 12 to finish the season, and Jacksonville was the only loss. So, you know what I mean? It's pretty impressive. They've just been finding a way to win, and I think they're going to continue to find a way to win. So yeah, it leaves the AFC Championship game as Denver versus Jacksonville. This is hard, and this is weird because we got Trevor Lawrence versus Bo Nix, and two really good defenses, two good coaches, and Liam Cohen and Sean Payton. Jacksonville's been running the ball well this year. Etienne had a good year. I think he started off a little hotter than he, ended, but still has been running the ball pretty good. This is a hard matchup, man. I think they're really similar teams. Like I said, Jacksonville did beat them that first game they played, but Sean Payton is a great coach. He's going to make adjustments. He's not going to come into the game with the same game plan. This is a tough one. I think I'm going to pick Jacksonville, man. I think I'm going to pick Jacksonville to go to the Super Bowl, and people are going to think I'm crazy. Not that crazy. They're the 3 seed. They were a really good team this year, but I think people are sleeping on them, man. I think this is Trevor's year. Like I said, last 6 weeks, 19 touchdowns to 1 turnover. He's been balling. And I'm not gonna lie, those stats were definitely padded a little bit against games like the Jets where he had 5. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. But I don't know, man. Jacksonville's just my pick. I got a weird feeling about them this year. A lot of people got them going out first round against Buffalo. I'm not too big on Buffalo. And I don't know. I just think Jacksonville has some favorable matchups here. I think they have some favorable matchups. And like I said, I think Denver is a similar team to them. I think they're similar teams in a way. But like I said, something about Trevor, man. I'm taking Trevor. I'm taking Trevor out of the AFC, man. The best quarterback in the AFC, obviously, in the playoffs is probably Josh Allen, right? And Drake May. Those two for sure. I just think that Jacksonville's team is a little underrated all around, and I think Jacoby Myers was a little underrated pickup during the season, and I think Trevor has more to work with than, Buffalo and New England. As much as it doesn't seem like it, Brian Thomas had a down year, Travis Hunter's out for the year. Etienne had a good year, you know what I mean? Jacoby Myers is a good pickup. Parker Washington's been cooking, you know what I mean? Brian Thomas, I think, will still be able to, be a factor in the playoffs, and they got a good tight end in Strange, and they just got a lot of good pieces. And Denver, like I said, I like them a lot. I don't necessarily trust Bo Nix in the playoffs yet. He wasn't bad last year, but I don't know, man. This game, it's hard for me to really dissect this game. There's two similar teams, and it's so hard for me to hear myself say Jacksonville's going to the Super Bowl. But I'm gonna stick with it. Even as crazy as it sounds, I'm gonna stick with it. Yeah, man. Like I said, I'm just rolling with Trevor. That defense, they cause turnovers. New coach, they're a different team now. They're a different team. And like I said, they've been finding a way to win. And something about teams like that tend to find a way, to make playoff runs here and there. So, yeah, I think I'm going to stick with Jacksonville, my pick out of the AFC. Maybe I'm crazy. I might be. But I think this year you don't have a really sure pick. There are no sure picks. There's no Chiefs. The Bills aren't what they used to be. There's no Ravens. The Bengals aren't in there. There's no short pick. There's no quarterback where you can stick to and be like, nobody's beating him. You know what I mean? Everybody here could be beaten. And Jacksonville go out in the first round. Josh Allen come out and have a great game against them, and that whole number one rushing defense and all that can mean nothing. I'm picking them to win the to go to the Super Bowl, not to win the Super Bowl. I'm picking them to go to the Super Bowl, and yeah, so I'm gonna stick with Jacksonville. It's just I had to pause for a second because I really just saying that is crazy. Jaguars going to the Super Bowl. But I think it's Trevor's year. I think he's one of those quarterbacks who's gonna get 1 year. Some quarterbacks just have that 1 year where they make that run. Joe Flacco had one. Aaron Rodgers. Well, Aaron Rodgers, he's had success throughout his career, but one Super Bowl run. You know what I mean? Drew Brees, one Super Bowl run. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like Trevor's got to get one. He's got to get one. I think the AFC's open this year. So, yeah, I'm rolling with the Jags, man. They're going to the Super Bowl. Let me move on to the NFC though. So my AFC picks. I'm just going over them again. Houston over Pittsburgh. Jacksonville over Buffalo. New England over Chargers. Denver over Houston, Jacksonville over New England, Jacksonville over Denver, Jacksonville in the Super Bowl. All right, now on to the NFC. First matchup I got here is Carolina at LA, Rams, and I don't really have much to say about this. Carolina did beat LA a few weeks ago, or like a few months ago, but I'm sticking with the Rams. I'm still going with the Rams. I think when it comes to the playoffs, I think Bryce Young's gonna have a rough game. Yeah, listen, I like Bryce Young. I really do. I think he's been pretty good this year. Tech got 1,000 yards. They've ran the ball decently well this year. Bryce Young, he's found a way to make plays in big moments. He made a huge clutch throw against Rams to, take the lead and pretty much end up beating them. He looked good last week too, man. He made some plays last week late in that game against Tampa Bay. Bryce has been good. He's been good. I think this is where it ends. They're 8-9 division winner, and yeah, I'm taking the Rams, man. Matthew Stafford, Devontae Adams should be playing. Puka Nacua, Kyron, I'm rolling with them, man. I think they're gonna have a big offensive stats in the playoffs. I think they're gonna be rolling in the playoffs for sure. Stafford's been here before. He does this. We don't have to question it. McVay, been to 2 Super Bowls, won one. I'm just gonna take LA. Not really too much to say about that. Green Bay at Chicago. Now, they split the season series, and Chicago had a crazy game against them in the one they won. Crazy comeback. This is hard, man. This is hard. I'm gonna pick Chicago, and I'm not gonna lie. This is a little bit of recency bias, because for one, Chicago's been scoring the ball. They've been rolling. They've been scoring the ball. They have one of the better offenses in the league. They can spread the ball around. I didn't check up on Odunze's status. I don't know if he's playing. He hasn't played in a while. Burden stepped up. Luther Burden stepped up recently. Colson Loveland had a really good year. They still got Cole Kmet back there. DJ Moore, obviously. Like, they got some good players. And Caleb's been, he's been good. Caleb, his completion percentage hasn't been great this year, but he's been good. He's still been really good. He's made a lot of clutch plays, a lot of game-winning drives, a lot of comebacks. He seems to always, make a play when you need one. He's been using his feet a lot this year too. Caleb had a really good year, man. I'm actually a big fan of Chicago. Big fan of Caleb. Definitely rooting for them a little bit, so I might be a little biased on this one. Green Bay's just, they got injuries. Micah Parsons out. Jordan Love is coming back, but he's been out. They've been a little cold lately. The receiving core is a little iffy at all times. Yeah, man, I really like Jordan Love. I think he's really, really good, honestly. I think Jordan Love is actually a little underrated. But I'm going to stick with Chicago because, for one, coaching, I really like Ben Johnson. He turned this team around within the first year. Caleb, just a little side note, Caleb was sacked 68 times last year. 68 times. That's insane. And the first year, Ben Johnson comes in, cleans that up immediately. Everything's rolling clear. Way better than it was before. And, they make the playoffs, they win the division, and here they are. I just think, this is a different team than what we've seen in the past. Well, it's the past. It's just last year. Caleb's only been there for 1 year. So the first year with Ben Johnson, this is what they look like. You know what I mean? And I just think that it's not a fluke. I don't think it's a fluke, man. They got good running backs. They can run the ball, Monangai and Swift, and they're really deep. They're really deep. Their defense causes turnovers. They have a pretty good secondary. Their defense is really mediocre, but it can get the job done. So, they do tend to give up some points. We've seen them give up 38 against San Francisco the other week. But I'm still gonna stick with Chicago. I just think Chicago's rolling a little more. They're a little hotter coming into the playoffs. I think they're a little more confident too. I think Green Bay with some of their injuries have lost a little bit of confidence, and Jordan Love coming back off an injury. You know what I mean? I'm gonna stick with Chicago here. Niners versus Eagles. A lot of people aren't gonna like my take on this. I am a Cowboys fan. Not the biggest Eagles fan, obviously. I'm gonna take the Niners. I'm gonna take the Niners here, and the main reason for me here is this Eagles team reminds me of the 2023 Eagles team, where they lost 6 out of the last 7 or something like that. Lost in the first round against the Bucks. A lot of controversy there. Locker room drama, whatever. Apparently, not really sure. Never really confirmed. But yeah, I'm gonna take the Niners here. I just think that Niners have one of the better passing offenses in the league, and Philly's pass defense is actually pretty good. But I think Christian McCaffrey is the type of player who can neutralize them. And don't get me wrong, Eagles got players who could chase him around the field for sure. Zach Bond, and they just got players all over the place. They got good front seven for sure. I just think that McCaffrey coming into these playoffs, I think the Niners are gonna use him how they've always used him, and I think he's gonna be a very dangerous weapon in these playoffs. I think he's gonna be very hard to stop. Kyle Shanahan is great at scheming against certain teams, scheming for his players. And I think he's really going to, figure out a way to use McCaffrey this playoffs that's going to make him almost unstoppable. I think he had a really underrated year. He ran for, 1,200, caught 100 balls. He's been different this year. He was great. And, yeah, man, I like Purdy a lot, man. I thought Purdy was rolling this year when he played. I believe he was 7-1 as a starter this year, 7-2 after the loss to the Seahawks. He was really good, man. Purdy's been, second half of the year, he's been really good. He missed half of the year, but when he played, they were really good. And, he makes plays, man. I like Purdy. He's been using his legs. You've seen him make a lot of plays against the Bears a couple weeks ago. They got a lot of weapons. Kittle, Bourne, Pearsall, Jennings, just a lot of different weapons. And I think they're the type of team that could actually really neutralize Philly's defense in a way to where, Philly, they have a great defense. They've stopped a lot of teams. They've, shown it all year. I just think that the Niners are a little too deep. Like I said, too many players to utilize, and I don't think Philly's going to be able to. Their defense, I think their secondary is a little overrated, and I think Purdy's going to be able to, have a decent game while also being able to McCaffrey get his game off. You know what I mean? So, on the Eagles side, listen, I'm really as much as I don't like the Eagles, I thought Jalen Hurts was actually pretty good this year. For the most part, I think there's just, of course there's halves where he throws for 0 yards, completes no passes, does this and that. But there was games, against Minnesota, against LA, where they needed him to throw the ball, and he came out and threw for 300-plus yards, 2-3 touchdowns, brought them back in the Rams game. I've seen him have some really good moments this year, and I thought he's been pretty good. Something about that team's not clicking right now to the full extent. They don't look bad. They still won 11 games. They're obviously a good team. They won 11 games. I thought they should have won 13. You know what I mean? I just think that, like I said, this reminds me of 2023. And I think there's, some questions on Philly's side. Saquon wasn't the same this year after last year. Like I said, their defense is really good, but I think the Niners got the pieces to neutralize it. So I'm going to take the Niners on this one. On to the next matchup. All right, that was the whole first round of the NFC. Yep, I did. So I got LA beating Carolina, Chicago beating Green Bay, and Niners beating Philly. On to the divisional round. Seattle versus San Francisco. Now, this was a hard one to pick because Seattle just beat San Francisco and they held them to 3 points. You know what I mean? So, in Seattle having the first round bye, Seattle was great this year. I don't know, something about the Niners I really like. I think McCaffrey, like I said, McCaffrey is just going to be, he's going to be like the MVP of the playoffs. Maybe not the MVP of the playoffs, but I think he's going to have a great playoffs. I think he's going to be used a lot. I think Kyle Shanahan's going to figure out how to, use him in certain situations against, people are going to scheme against him. People are going to be ready for McCaffrey. They know, what I'm saying? Teams aren't stupid. But, for example, McCaffrey, I believe he picked up, 120 first downs this year? That's 7 per game. That means 7 times per game McCaffrey is extending your drive. giving you a chance to score each time he does that. You know what I mean? And I don't know, man. Seattle has a good rush defense. I think McCaffrey is the type player where you don't have to hand him the ball off 15 times, 20 times for him to be effective. You get the ball, just get the ball in his hands. And there's different ways you can use him to where no matter if they're stopping his run at first, he's still going to be getting the ball. He's still going to be getting used. And they neutralized him a little bit when they played him a few weeks ago. But I'm assuming, Kyle Shanahan comes out with a different game plan, attacks it differently. And, I think Purdy will have a better game this time around. We've seen him play pretty good in the playoffs at times. Yeah, man, I don't know. San Francisco, I'm picking San Francisco. Just, I don't know if I said that yet. I really like Kittle, going into the playoffs. He's actually been playing pretty good. He's always up and down, healthy, unhealthy, whatever. I think, going into the playoffs with weapons like him and McCaffrey, I think they're perfect for Purdy. I think they make his life easier. I think, he can get them the ball and, short passes, and they can make plays with the ball in their hands. And then you got pieces on the outside that are just kind of there when you need them. Juwan Jennings, Pearsall, Bourne, they make plays too. So, I think, like I said, another situation where I just think the Niners are deep. I think they'll come into this game with a different scheme they did against the Seahawks the last time. I'm assuming they don't score 3 points again. Let me just say that. And Seattle only scored 13 themselves. And I just don't trust Sam Darnold, man. I like Sam Darnold. I don't love him. I think he is what he is. I think he's a good quarterback when he's surrounded by good players, when he's in a good scheme. I just think he's not the system. You know what I'm saying? He's in a system. And, Seattle runs the ball really well. 49ers have a decent run defense. You know what I mean? They don't have a great pass defense, but they have a good run defense. And I think the Niners' strengths, match up good against Seattle's strengths, defensively versus Seattle offensively. So, yeah, man, I mean, I don't know. Seattle has won 11 out of 12. So, I don't know, man. It's really hard to pick against the number 1 seed in their first game, but I'm taking San Francisco, man. I don't know, something about San Francisco this year. I just got them rolling. The fact that they even almost were able to get the 1 seed with missing their quarterback for half the season, and then, not even just that, Nick Bosa out for the year, Fred Warner was out. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're missing a lot of players. They're missing key players, too. And the fact that they could actually still almost get the 1 seed is really underrated. It's really insane. And I think stuff like that's going to carry over into the playoffs, man. I think they're a better team than people think. And, I think, Kyle Shanahan's going to find a way to get it done. All right, so, yeah, I got San Francisco in that game. On to the next matchup. Sorry, I'm looking at a lot here. I'm reading a lot. I don't usually write stuff down. I had to write all this down, so, I don't miss nothing. But yeah, the way I wrote it down is kind of confusing me, so I keep getting stuck. Next game, Rams at Chicago. And I'm going to pick the Rams in this game, mainly because of quarterback and just skill position. The Bears got good players. The Rams have better ones. Both defenses. The Rams have a decent defense. They got some good young pass rushers in Byron Young, Jared Verse. They got some good players over there for sure. I just think that, Chicago, as much as I like them and I'm rooting for them, I don't think, they're going to be able to, I don't know how to explain it. I mean, I think they're going to keep rolling, through Green Bay because I think Green Bay is struggling right now. I think the Rams are going to find, their groove in the playoffs, and I think they're going to roll. Devontae Adams should be coming back. Stafford's coming off a great year. He's been here before. McVay, the Rams always look good in the playoffs. They always perform well. You know what I mean? And I just think the veterans on the Rams, the coaching, the experience is going to show. I think that's just what's going to put the Rams over the top here. I think Chicago's going to be able to fight. I think it's going to be a good game. I think the Rams are just going to be a little too tough at the end. I just think that offense is going to, like I said, they're going to roll. They're so deep, Nakua, Adams, Kyron Williams. Like, these aren't just, like, good players. These are, like, top of their position. You know what I mean? Like, Devontae Adams led the league in touchdowns this year, and I don't think he's caught one since November. You know what I mean? So, it's crazy. It's crazy. I think, recently, they even look the way they looked throughout the season. But I think, coming into the playoffs, I think that's going to change. I think they're going to enter a different mode. And, I think Stafford is probably the best quarterback in the NFC. Yeah, I mean, he's the best. Yeah, he's the best quarterback. I mean, he was the best quarterback in the league probably this year outside of May. If, you want to debate that, it's a debate. But Definitely the best quarterback in the NFC. And like I said, I'm rolling with the quarterback, man. When it comes to the playoffs, coaching and quarterback. That's really what's going to win you playoff games for the most part. Like, it doesn't always, but it's really the best strengths to have in a playoff game. So yeah, man, I'm gonna stick with the Rams. That means I have a Niners versus Rams conference championship game, and it's crazy, man. NFC West. NFC West was great this year. They had the one seed, and in my predictions, they have the two conference championship contenders. I'm gonna take the Rams here to go to the Super Bowl. Like I said, I really like the Niners. I've really been rooting for them. I just, if I had to choose, like I said, I love Kyle Shanahan, great coach. Just the way he's found a way to get it done this year has been really impressive. McVay is just as impressive. McVay is a great coach. Stafford, MVP candidate. If Nakua and Adams are both healthy this whole playoff run, I can't see the Niners being able to score as much points as them. Niners don't have a good pass defense, and Rams have, the best pass offense in the NFL. So I'm gonna go with that. I think that's a strength versus a weakness that is just too jarring for me. It's too much. Best versus one of the worst. I just think LA's gonna roll there. I think LA's gonna roll there. I think San Francisco can find a way to fight. I just don't think McCaffrey's gonna be able to carry the load enough in a game like that. To where the Rams are probably gonna be able to throw the ball all over the field, and especially if the Niners can't get to him. If the Niners can't get to Stafford, they don't have much of a chance of winning that game. And the Niners pass rush is not great. So yeah, man, that leaves me with a I don't even think I wrote it down. Oh, I did write it down. That leaves me with a Rams versus Jacksonville Super Bowl. And this is interesting because if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, like when I did it 2 weeks ago, like I said earlier in the video, I did this 2 weeks ago. This was not the matchup I had. A few weeks went by. You see how teams continue to play. I go to look back at a few things earlier in the season that I kind of forgot about. And I end up with a Rams versus Jacksonville Super Bowl. I don't know how. It sounds a little crazy to me, but we're here. And I'm going to take the Rams to win. I think Stafford gets his second ring. I think he goes out. He won't retire after this year, but I think this will give him, the option to retire on, top of the hill. Yeah, man, I would love to see Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence pull it off and make a Super Bowl run. I just don't see it happening here. Like I said, I think the Rams are just a little too good in the passing game with the balance of also having a great running back in Kyren Williams, to where I think that, even some of the best defenses, Jacksonville's biggest strength is a rush defense. They have the best rush defense in the league. Rams don't really need to run the ball to win the game. It helps. It always helps, but they don't need to. You know what I mean? And I think, quarterback matchup again, Stafford versus Lawrence. I'm picking Lawrence. Jesus. I'm picking Stafford. You know what I mean? I'm going with the veteran, the MVP candidate. I just think, I think he's on a mission this year. I think, and there's another thing too, is like the Rams, Stafford won a Super Bowl 5 years ago, right? 2021. That was his 14th season in the NFL, 13th season, 14th season, something like that. He could have gave it up right there. He could have been like, all right, I'm out. Like, I got my Super Bowl. I'm good. I had a good career, long career. Like, he wasn't that old. He was probably about 34, 35. But, he still, he just kept coming back. And then a few years after that, he was getting injured. And the Rams were up and down, and they weren't the best. And he just kept coming back. And then he comes back this year and is MVP candidate, one of the best teams in the league, best passing offense, all that. He just continues to come back and do it. And I think this is going to be the first fair chance he's gotten at a Super Bowl since that Super Bowl year. And, yeah, I just think that, they don't have the same team that they had when they won it. But, they're even better in a way on offense. On offense, they're even better in a way. Probably better running at this time. They had Cooper Kupp in 21, but now they have Nakua and Adams. You know what I mean? Still have Higbee. They have a lot of options, man. They have a lot of good players. And, like I said, I just don't think that Stafford kept coming back for no reason. I think he knows that this team can win a Super Bowl. I think he knows that with McVay, they always have a chance. With him, they always have a chance. And if healthy, they're hard to beat. And I think he's going to make another Super Bowl run. And, yeah, man, on Jacksonville's side, listen, like I said, I think they're going to surprise people in these playoffs. I think they're going to make a little bit of a run. I think Buffalo is actually a favorable matchup for them in the first round. Because a lot of people have them going out first round. I think that's a favorable matchup for Jacksonville. You want to pick Buffalo because of the quarterback. I think Jacksonville is a lot better team. Is a lot better team. So yeah, man, I think them going to the Super Bowl. It sucks picking a team like Jacksonville, like a surprise pick to go to the Super Bowl and having them lose, because then it feels pointless, right? But I just think the AFC is a little more open than the NFC. I think the NFC is open, but I think, Stafford, McVay, that combination right there is the best quarterback coach combination maybe in the playoffs. I mean, Vrabel is great. Outside of that, you either have mediocrity at one spot, coaching or quarterback. Whether you're looking at Houston, where C.J. Stroud is a little mediocre, Denver, Bo Nix is good, not great. New England. I already said New England. And you got teams like the Niners, where I love Shanahan. I like Purdy, but I think Purdy's still a little limited. So I just think Rams have that quarterback coaching combination, McVay, Stafford, and I'm just gonna roll with them. I think those young pass rushers are gonna be motivated and driven coming into these playoffs. Young verse. I think they have a lot of X factors. They have a lot of X factors. Kyron, Puka, Devontae, players on defense, Stafford, even McVay himself is an X factor. When you have him, they found ways to succeed in the playoffs. And then when they weren't healthy, they struggled. But they always, they're always fighting and always competing. And this year, I think, like I said, one of their more fair chances since the Super Bowl, and I think they're gonna get another one. So yeah, that's my playoff predictions. Rams versus Jags Super Bowl sounds crazy. And like I said, I changed my picks a bunch of times. This was really hard to do because, when you go to the playoffs, everybody's good. Everybody's good. Nobody has a terrible defense. Nobody has a terrible offense. Everybody's either, really, really good at something or at least good at it, So everybody, has their strengths and weaknesses. But, yeah, man, this is definitely a hard video to do. But yeah, man, LA Rams Super Bowl winners. I'm not gonna lie. If that game came up, I'd be rooting for Jacksonville. I'd want to see the upset. I'd want to see Trevor. Good story. Jacksonville's never won one. That would be insane. But I think I'm gonna. If I had to be honest with myself, I think I'd take the Rams. So I'm gonna go with the Rams as my Super Bowl winner. And let me know what you guys think, because I think even I'm looking at this thinking I'm crazy. But I think the NFL playoffs, you got to get a little crazy. Things never really go how you think they're gonna. So yeah, man. But that's pretty much it. Thanks for tuning in. You know what you know. Finally back after a month and some change. But I'm back, and thanks to everybody who watches. Thank you.